The forgotten weapon. In the dusty outskirts of what had once been Seattle, an old M1 Abrams tank sat silently beneath a weather tarp. Its once proud olive-drab paint had faded and chipped away over the years, leaving it vulnerable to the elements. The alien visitors from the Centu Alliance found the tank amusing. To them, it was nothing more than a relic of a primitive past, something far beneath their advanced civilization. They gathered around it, their sleek, elongated bodies scanning it with high-tech devices, chittering amongst themselves in their melodious foreign tongue. As their translators rendered their comments into English, their laughter echoed through the empty wasteland. "Look at this prehistoric weapon," one of them said, running a long four-fingered hand along the tank's sturdy hull. "Chemical propulsion, depleted uranium rounds, manual targeting systems. It's like finding a stone spear in a plasma rifle factory." Their laughter grew louder as the others joined in, their iridescent scales shimmering in the afternoon sunlight. The aliens, with their gravity drives and energy shields, couldn't fathom the concept of a weapon so simple yet powerful. To them, it was a joke. But what they didn't notice was the lone figure watching from a hidden bunker entrance. Sarah stood there, her grandfather's dog tags clutched tightly in her hand. Sarah had grown up listening to her grandfather's stories. He had been a proud member of the Armored Division, sharing tales of the M1 Abrams, the tank that had once been a symbol of human ingenuity, strength, and resilience. These machines, her grandfather had always said, weren't just weapons. They were works of art, built with American ingenuity and grit. As the aliens made fun of the tank, Sarah felt her resolve harden. They might have their superior technology, but they didn't understand what drove humanity. They didn't understand that sometimes the oldest tools were the most reliable. 3 months ago, the Centu Alliance had arrived. They claimed to be elevating humanity, guiding the species toward their version of civilization. But Sarah's people had resisted. And now, the aliens were beginning to learn that humanity wasn't so easily crushed. Sarah's team had spent weeks secretly reactivating the old tank. They'd scavenged abandoned military bases for fuel, ammunition, and parts. Their mission was simple: surprise the aliens, strike them where they least expected it. Reawakening the beast continued. As the rumble of the tank's engine filled the air, Sarah felt the weight of history press down on her shoulders. This wasn't just any tank. It was a symbol of human resilience, a relic from a time when humanity believed in the strength of its own creations. Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the stories her grandfather used to tell her. He had been a part of the greatest generation, the one that had fought wars across continents, held the line against impossible odds, and always came out on top. Her grandfather had always said that a tank was more than just a weapon. It was a fortress on wheels, a piece of humanity's soul encapsulated in metal. As a child, Sarah had seen the pride in his eyes when he spoke of the old days, the days when the tanks had rolled through battlefields, unstoppable and indomitable. She had never truly understood the depth of his words until now. Now, standing here in front of the reactivated machine, Sarah understood completely. This tank wasn't just a weapon to fight the aliens. It was a reminder of everything that humanity had overcome. It was a reminder of every battle, every victory, and every sacrifice that had led to this moment. James stood beside her, looking up at the tank with a quiet expression. He knew how important this was to Sarah. They had both spent months gathering supplies, scouring the abandoned military bases for parts and fuel, fixing up the tank piece by piece. And now, they were ready. The enemy would never see it coming. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" James asked, his voice soft but steady. Sarah turned to him, a fierce determination in her eyes. "We're not just doing this, James. We're fighting back. We're showing them that humanity isn't some primitive species that they can trample on. We're showing them that we have a fire inside of us, a fire they'll never be able to extinguish." James nodded, his face hardening with resolve. "Let's show them then. Let's make them regret ever thinking they could take us down." The tank's engine roared louder as Sarah gave the command to move forward. The ground trembled beneath the heavy treads, and the tank slowly began to advance, its metal frame creaking and groaning as it pushed through the overgrown terrain. The camouflage netting that covered the tank blended seamlessly with the landscape, making it nearly invisible to the untrained eye. The team had taken every precaution to avoid detection. They knew the aliens had advanced technology that could easily detect any anomalies in the environment. But they also knew that the humans' ability to adapt and think on their feet was their greatest weapon. While the aliens focused on their high-tech sensors, they failed to consider one key factor: the element of surprise. As the tank moved deeper into enemy territory, Sarah's mind raced. The Centu Alliance had underestimated them, underestimated humanity. They thought that the human race was just a scattered group of survivors, clinging to life in the wake of the alien invasion. What they didn't know was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just in its technology or weaponry. It was in its ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight back when the odds were stacked against them. "All systems are online," James said, checking the controls. "We're good to go." Sarah didn't need any more confirmation. The tank was ready, and so was she. It was time to make the first strike. As they approached the Centu Alliance's perimeter, the air felt thick with tension. Sarah's team had spent weeks studying the aliens' movements, analyzing their routines, and mapping out the most vulnerable areas of their defenses. They knew the aliens had set up an energy shield around their base, protecting them from conventional weaponry. But Sarah had a plan. The M1 Abrams tank wasn't just any old machine. It was equipped with a powerful cannon capable of dealing with the shield, and it was far more reliable than the high-tech, experimental weapons the Centu Alliance relied on. The team halted the tank a safe distance away from the enemy base, taking cover behind a ridge. From here, they could observe the alien camp, and from here, they would strike. "Okay, here's the plan," Sarah said, her voice calm but full of determination. "We hit their shield generator first. If we can disable that, the rest of their defenses will be useless. Then we target the supply depot and the command center. The goal is to cause as much chaos as possible, force them to retreat. If we can knock them off balance, we'll have the upper hand." James glanced at the map on his screen. "Looks like we've got a clear shot. The generators on the east side of the base should be about 2 clicks from here." Sarah nodded. "That's our target. We'll move in, hit them hard, and disappear before they can react." The tank's turret slowly swiveled, locking onto the shield generator. Sarah's fingers hovered over the controls. This was it. One shot. It was a risk, but they didn't have the luxury of playing it safe. They had to strike fast, hit hard, and leave before the aliens realized what was happening. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, Sarah whispered as her finger pressed the button. The cannon erupted with a deafening roar, sending a shell screaming toward the generator. The blast collided with the energy shield, and for a split second, Sarah's heart stopped. Had it worked? Were they going to be detected before they could finish the job? Then the shield flickered. For the first time since the invasion began, the Centu Alliance's defenses began to fail. Sarah's heart surged with hope. They had done it. The shield was down. "Now's our chance," James shouted, his voice filled with excitement. "Let's hit them while they're still reeling." The tank roared to life again, its treads grinding over the earth as it surged forward. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. The old tank had been reawakened, and with it, the indomitable spirit of humanity had been unleashed. The battle had only just begun. And Sarah knew one thing for sure. Humanity was going to fight back, no matter the cost. The first strike continued. As the tank tore through the landscape, a strange calm settled over Sarah. The sheer power of the machine beneath her, combined with the years of careful preparation, filled her with a sense of purpose. Her team's plan had been months in the making. Every move was calculated, every decision deliberate. There was no room for error. The terrain blurred by, the tank's metal frame creaking as it bulldozed through the dense underbrush, moving at a steady pace. The hum of the engine vibrated through her body, and the cold weight of the dog tags in her pocket seemed to anchor her, grounding her in the moment. Sarah's mind was sharp, focused solely on the task ahead. They had to disable the energy shield, and they had to do it quickly. James, positioned in the rear of the tank, constantly monitored their surroundings, eyes scanning the area for any signs of danger. His fingers hovered over the communication panel, ready to relay any information that might come through. His expression was tense, but there was a fire in his eyes. He understood the stakes. They all did. All systems intact. No sign of alien patrols up ahead, James reported, his voice steady but full of intensity. But we should be ready for anything. It won't stay down for long. Sarah nodded, her jaw set in determination. They'll be underestimating us, just like they did with the tank. That's our edge. We move fast, hit hard, and vanish before they even know what happened. The tank's systems blinked green across the control panel, signaling everything was functioning as it should. Sarah's grip on the controls tightened as the faint hum of the engine almost seemed to sync with the beating of her heart. She knew that what they were doing wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message. Humanity was no longer a victim, no longer a species cowering in the face of an overwhelming invasion. They were fighting back. They were taking control of their fate. As they approached the outer perimeter of the enemy camp, Sarah ordered the tank to slow. The heavy-treaded vehicle came to a crawl, creeping through the foliage as they neared the shield generator. Through the infrared display on the tank's control panel, she could see the alien base stretching out before her. The massive energy shield that surrounded it shimmered faintly, almost like a mirage, its shimmering barrier distorting the air. The shield generator was tucked away behind a cluster of alien structures. It wasn't the most fortified area, but it was heavily guarded. There were drone sentries patrolling the perimeter, automated sentries hovering above like predatory birds. Their sharp, multi-lens eyes scanned the area for any signs of intruders. Sarah's team had spent days studying the drone's patrol patterns, and they knew the exact timing of when they would be most vulnerable. 10 meters out, James warned, his eyes narrowing as the drone sentries passed overhead. We'll have to make this fast. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Steady, she murmured, her fingers steadying on the controls. Remember the plan. We hit them hard, disable the generator, and disappear before they can respond. The tank lurched forward, accelerating with controlled precision. It felt like time had slowed as the massive machine moved steadily into position, its large, turret-mounted cannon aimed directly at the heart of the shield generator. Sarah's mind raced through 1,000 thoughts, but in that moment, one thought dominated everything else. They had to succeed. Firing in 3, 2, 1, Sarah said, her voice steady as she locked her gaze on the generator through the targeting scope. A loud, deafening roar split the air as the tank's cannon discharged. The force of the blast sent shockwaves through the earth beneath them, and the shell shot through the air at terrifying speed, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. Sarah watched, her breath catching in her throat, as the shell collided with the shimmering energy shield, creating a blinding explosion. For a moment, everything was silent. The energy shield flickered and shimmered, as though struggling to maintain its integrity. Then, it collapsed in on itself with a violent pulse, and the shimmering barrier shattered like glass. The base went dark. The shock of the hit reverberated across the base, and Sarah could hear the sound of alarms blaring through the comms. The Centu Alliance had clearly been caught off guard. Their superior technology couldn't account for a force like this, an old, seemingly useless tank unleashing chaos upon them. Shields down. Let's move, Sarah barked. James slammed his fist on the communication panel, triggering the next phase of the assault. Commencing diversionary tactics now, he yelled. The tank rolled forward again, its heavy treads chewing up the terrain beneath it. They couldn't wait around to see how the aliens would react. Every second mattered. The element of surprise was fleeting, and they had to capitalize on it. As they approached the first defensive position, the aliens reacted quickly. The first wave of Sentu soldiers, hidden behind their sleek energy barriers, rose from their concealed positions. They wore metallic armor that reflected the dim light from the shattered energy shield. But they were too slow. Their weapons, designed for overwhelming force, were useless against the tank's thick armor. Sarah grinned as the tank's secondary weapons came online, unleashing a flurry of fire as they tore through the alien defenses. A salvo of rounds ripped through the barrier's weak points, sending the enemy scattering in all directions. But Sarah wasn't done yet. She had learned long ago that it wasn't enough to just destroy the enemy's weapons. You had to hit them where it hurt. Focus fire on their supply depot, Sarah commanded, her voice low and resolute. The tank's turret shifted with mechanical precision, locking onto the supply depot's heavily reinforced structures. The depot, which housed the bulk of the Sentu Alliance's supplies, was a critical point in their operation. Destroying it would cripple their ability to fight back effectively. With a sharp blast, the tank's cannon roared to life once more, striking the depot with a powerful explosion that sent debris scattering through the air. Alien soldiers screamed in surprise as the explosion rocked the entire base. The blast disrupted their communication lines, throwing their forces into disarray. Direct hit. They won't be able to resupply for hours, James said with satisfaction. That should slow them down. The tank continued its assault, dodging laser fire and weaving through the wreckage of destroyed alien drones. The Sentu Alliance's once pristine camp was now in shambles, chaos reigning across the battlefield. But Sarah knew they couldn't let up. This was just the beginning. The fight was far from over. Human ingenuity. The ground was still trembling from the last blast, and the tank rolled over the shattered remains of the Sentu Alliance's defenses, leaving destruction in its wake. The once pristine alien base had turned into a war zone. Sparks flew from the ruined energy shields, sending bright flashes into the darkening sky as Sarah's team moved with deadly efficiency. They had broken through the initial defenses, but now the real challenge began. The Sentu Alliance wasn't going to let a few surprises stop them. They would retaliate, and they would retaliate hard. Sarah's grip tightened on the controls as she steered the M1 Abrams through the debris field. Her mind raced through the plan, analyzing each move they'd made and preparing for the counterattacks that would inevitably follow. They couldn't afford to get complacent, not now. They had the advantage, but it was fragile. Every step forward carried with it the weight of the entire mission. If they failed, it wouldn't just be the tank that would fall. It would be humanity's chance to fight back. We've broken their lines, but they'll regroup soon. We need to keep up the pressure, Sarah said, her voice cutting through the static-filled comms. James, who was now monitoring their fuel levels, didn't hesitate. I've calculated the remaining supply lines. We have enough ammo for another 2 hits before we need to fall back for resupply. Sarah's brow furrowed. We can't retreat yet. We've crippled their supply depot, but there's still their command center. We hit that, and their entire operation could collapse. James gave a sharp nod. Understood. I'll adjust our trajectory, but we need to move quickly. They're organizing a counteroffensive. They knew the Sentu Alliance's next move would be to deploy reinforcements, drone fighters, advanced energy weapons, and possibly a new shield system that could be even harder to break. But Sarah wasn't about to let them regroup. She'd spent too long studying the tactics of alien invaders to let them dictate the course of the battle. She was going to force the Sentu Alliance to react to her, to humanity's determination. They would make the first move. James, get the secondary weapon systems online. We need to create a distraction. Something big, Sarah ordered, her eyes scanning the horizon for movement. The tank rumbled beneath her feet as James worked quickly, programming a series of timed charges designed to cause a massive explosion near the entrance to the alien command center. The goal was simple: create chaos, throw off their sense of control, and make them chase shadows. They had already proven they could strike from unexpected angles, and now it was time to push that advantage to its limit. A few minutes later, the tank stopped, hidden just beyond a ridge. The Centu Alliance's command center loomed ahead, a massive, silver-plated fortress guarded by automated drones and the remnants of their energy shields. The alien soldiers, quick, agile, and highly trained, moved with purpose, but there was a crack in their defenses. They were underestimating the humans they had once thought to be powerless. Initiating the distraction now, James said, his fingers flying over the control panel as he set the charges. A low hum echoed from beneath the tank's armored exterior, signaling the activation of the detonators. With a click, Sarah ordered the tank to move forward once more, accelerating toward the heart of the base. They needed to make sure the explosion was enough to keep the aliens off balance for long enough to strike the command center. The tank's cannon, poised and ready, swiveled toward the center of the base, locking onto the most vulnerable point, the communications array. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Sarah called out. The shell left the barrel with a deafening crack, soaring through the air toward the alien command center. The explosion that followed was unlike anything Sarah had experienced before. The earth shook as the blast reverberated through the air, and the shockwave sent a ripple of energy cascading through the alien base. Drones fell from the sky like discarded toys, their systems fried by the blast. The outer walls of the command center crumpled under the force of the attack. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the sound of panic, the clicking of alien communication devices scrambling to regroup. The Centu Alliance had just lost their control center, and with it, the very nerve of their operation. It was a moment of chaos, and Sarah knew they had to move quickly before the enemy could adapt. Let's move. Now. Sarah barked, urging the tank forward once more. The tank surged forward, its engines roaring as it barreled through the wreckage of the command center. The remaining alien soldiers scattered in disarray, trying to regroup, but it was too late. Sarah's team had taken the initiative, and the aliens were caught off guard. They hadn't prepared for this kind of attack, this level of unpredictability. The tank's secondary weapons fired in rapid succession, sending rounds tearing through the remaining alien defenses. The Centu soldiers fought back, launching bursts of energy from their rifles, but their shots were too wild, too disorganized. They couldn't focus their fire on the tank as it rumbled through their defenses. The old machine had become a juggernaut, unstoppable and relentless. As the tank neared the heart of the command center, Sarah's fingers danced over the console, adjusting the tank's trajectory for one final strike. The communications array was in their sights. Destroying it would cripple the aliens' ability to coordinate their remaining forces. This had to be the final blow. The endgame. Target locked, Sarah murmured, ready to fire. The cannon fired with a violent force, and the blast that followed took down the command center's central communication tower. Sparks flew from the control panels as alien operators scrambled to try and repair their systems. But it was no use. The humans had done what they set out to do. They had disabled the heart of the Centu Alliance's operation. With the command center in ruins and their communications shattered, the Centu Alliance found itself in disarray. For the first time, they were vulnerable. For the first time, they realized that humanity was not a species they could easily conquer. The old M1 Abrams tank, mocked for its age and simplicity, had become a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience, a testament to what could be accomplished when humans refused to give up. As Sarah watched the alien forces retreat into the distant horizon, she felt a surge of pride and triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck back and proven that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, humanity could still fight, still win, and still rise. But as the dust settled and the last of the alien ships fled, Sarah knew this wasn't over. The fight for Earth had only just begun. The turning point. The remnants of the alien command center smoldered in the distance, a twisted heap of debris and shattered metal. The landscape, once vibrant and untouched, now seemed to pulse with the energy of battle. Smoke billowed into the sky, darkening the once brilliant sunlight, while the sound of distant explosions echoed off the jagged horizon. Humanity had struck a blow, but Sarah knew better than to think the Centu alliance was done. The alien forces were not going to fall back without a fight. They were an organized, relentless species that had conquered countless worlds, and they would not be deterred by a single skirmish. But they hadn't counted on humanity's determination. They hadn't counted on the fact that, when cornered, humans didn't simply fold, they fought back with everything they had. "Status report," Sarah said, her voice calm but steely as she monitored the tank systems. The M1 Abrams, battered and scarred from the battle, still held up under the pressure, but Sarah knew it wouldn't be long before their luck ran out. James, sitting behind the controls of the secondary weapons system, glanced over his display. "We've used about 60% of our ammo. Fuel levels are at 40%. We can't keep this up much longer." "Then we make this last strike count," Sarah replied. She turned her eyes toward the horizon, where a dark cloud of alien ships began to form. They were coming. The reinforcements. The Centu alliance was regrouping, and they were bringing their heavy artillery. Sarah's fingers tightened on the tank's control panel as she mentally calculated the next move. The alien reinforcements would likely be armed with weapons far beyond what the tank could handle. Their shields would be tougher, their energy weapons far more advanced. She knew they had only one real chance left: hit them before they could fortify their position. James spoke again, his voice tinged with urgency. "Sarah, we can't wait any longer. They're deploying their heavy ships. If we don't get out of here now, we'll be sitting ducks." "We don't retreat," Sarah said firmly, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the alien formation. "We finish this now. We take out their reinforcements, and then we make sure they never think of returning to Earth." The tank's cannon hummed as it powered up. The massive alien fleet was now hovering overhead, sleek ships gliding through the sky, their energy shields glowing like a multicolored aurora. They were preparing to deploy forces to counterattack, and that's exactly what Sarah had been waiting for. Initiating full assault. "Aim for the lead ship," she commanded. The tank's main gun swung into position, locking onto the largest of the alien vessels. The ship was massive, larger than anything humanity had ever encountered, and its armor glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. It was the heart of the incoming force, and Sarah knew that if they could destroy it, they might just win the battle before it even began. James glanced at her, his face a mixture of awe and anxiety. "Are you sure we can make it through their shields?" Sarah didn't look away from the approaching fleet. "We've taken down their shields once before. We can do it again. We just have to make sure the shot counts." The tank's barrel turned, the targeting systems locking on to the ship's energy core. With each passing second, the ship grew larger in the scope, its immense size impossible to ignore. But Sarah didn't flinch. She was determined, focused. The fate of the battle, and perhaps humanity's survival, rested in her hands. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. Sarah murmured, pressing the trigger. The tank's cannon erupted in a blaze of light. The shell shot through the air like a comet, piercing the atmosphere with explosive force. Time seemed to slow as the shell rocketed toward the alien ship, its trajectory perfectly calibrated to strike the energy core. The entire tank shuddered from the recoil, but Sarah didn't flinch. She was already thinking ahead, already moving on to the next objective. The shell collided with the lead ship, a massive explosion blossoming in the sky. For a moment, it seemed as though the very air itself was on fire. And then, the shockwave hit. The blast sent a ripple of energy cascading across the battlefield, throwing off the trajectory of the alien ships and sending debris scattering in all directions. The massive ship staggered, its engine sputtering as its energy shields flickered and died. A cheer erupted from the team. They had done it. They had taken down the heart of the alien fleet. But the victory was bittersweet. The remaining ships began to reorganize, their energy shields snapping back into place. The battle was far from over. The Centu Alliance would not go down without a fight. Sarah knew that they would have to press their advantage now or risk losing everything. "James, I need you to set the coordinates for the secondary strike," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "We take out the remaining ships while they're still disoriented." James worked quickly, his fingers dancing over the controls. "We've got enough ammo for one more shot, but that's it. This has to count." Sarah glanced at the map on her screen, analyzing the position of the remaining alien vessels. They had been knocked off balance, their shields weakened, but they were far from defeated. There was no time to waste. The tank had only one shot left in its arsenal. It had to be perfect. "Targeting their supply ship," Sarah said decisively. "Without it, they can't resupply. If we destroy it, they won't be able to continue their assault." The tank's barrel swung into place again, targeting the largest remaining alien vessel. It was a risk. This ship was heavily shielded and well armored, but Sarah had no choice. If they didn't destroy it, the aliens would simply regroup and launch another attack. This was their moment to end the fight. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, Sarah called. The tank's cannon fired once more, the shot cutting through the air like a streak of lightning. The shell sped toward the alien supply ship, a massive armored vessel that carried everything the Centu Alliance needed to continue the invasion. The blast struck with pinpoint precision, tearing through the ship's shields and tearing it apart from the inside out. The explosion was catastrophic. The ship disintegrated in a massive ball of fire and debris, its once imposing structure reduced to rubble. Sarah's heart raced as she watched the destruction unfold before her. It was a beautiful sight, but it wasn't over yet. The remaining alien ships were in disarray, but they still had enough firepower to be dangerous. "We've done it," James said, a note of disbelief in his voice. But Sarah wasn't about to relax. "Not yet. They're not done yet. Not while there's still a chance to fight," she said. "We finish them off now." As the last of the alien ships fled into the distance, leaving behind a trail of debris and destruction, Sarah felt a surge of both relief and anticipation. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Humanity had shown its strength, and now the Centu Alliance would know that Earth was not a planet to be conquered easily. It was a world worth fighting for.